everyone.
Hi, sorry. I'll take the blame. It's my fault we're late.
Oh, no, that's
It's
fine.
it's the last day of the year, y'all.
Happy New Year. Happy almost New Year. Can you believe it, Emerald? 2024 is
No.
almost over.
You remember, I remember it, turning 2000 and you couldn't fathom the year 2025, right? And there was the whole new millennium and Y2K, and supposedly all kinds of things are going to go haywire. So you definitely couldn't think about 2025. And it feels like the last 25 years have just went by so quickly.
Wow, I hadn't even broadened out that far. I was just thinking about the last 12 months, which on the one hand seemed like they lasted forever. On the other hand, they did go by in a flash, so eventful. But yeah, now that you take me back to Y2K, I remember where I was. I was like half ready for the world to end in a beach house on the coast of Oregon, very blustery and gray and kind of, apocalyptic. And then it didn't end, and that was a relief.
Isn't that parallel with how we kind of felt in October? That's the way we thought we were going to feel.
Right.
This December, because we thought everything was going to turn out very differently. And I mean, there's still concerning matters, which we'll get to, but I'm just glad we're sitting in a different position than I was afraid we were going to be in on this last day of 2024.
Can you imagine if things had gone the other way? Well, you and I would be sitting in, quarantine camps somewhere in shackles and solitary confinement. I have no doubt. And instead, we all worked really hard. I'm trying to be nonpartisan, but the good news is in 2024, a lot of people fought for freedom and really made a difference. What would you say about?
I would agree. I would say, the last 4 years, there were a lot of people who were really fighting people that don't get a claim. You might not know their names, but there were a lot of concerned citizens on the ground in the key battleground states, particularly Pennsylvania and Georgia. And look, we have a debt of gratitude to owe them on this December 31st, 2024, because we're going into a very different 2025 because of those kind of grassroots efforts. And so on the last day of the year, I want to thank all those people, particularly Leah Hoops and Greg Sinstrom in Pennsylvania, all the crew in Georgia. I mean, look, there's so many names. There's too many to even mention in Georgia. Just did an amazing job in getting out there and making a difference. And I think we have a lot to be thankful for. And I know we're going to go into more of that a little bit later as well, Naomi.
Yeah, we do have a lot to be thankful for. I mean, every day has its battles still, right? But I mean, It would just be like, I can't even bring myself to think how dystopian it would be if things hadn't gone the way they are. And the fact that we're having like debates about this freedom fighter and this, health freedom fighter in or out of the new administration is so exciting. Like in a million years, I couldn't have hoped and wished that someone like Jay Bhattacharya, the Stanford professor whom we adore so much in my household, would be tapped to run NIH, or even that there's a chance that RFK Jr., whatever you may think about his kind of big picture over time, has been a stalwart voice for health freedom, for kids' health, that there's even a chance that he'd be confirmed. I mean, we'd all be in the grip of the uniparty right now if it weren't for this. So it is a lot to be thankful for. And wow, I just hope that all this promise bears fruit and doesn't get derailed, which probably brings us to our first subject. Everyone was really excited about Elon Musk, or a lot of people on the independent media, health freedom side, free speech side, were really excited about Elon Musk. I should say, as always, right now, that I have a conflict that I can't discuss with X at the moment. But all that being said, having disclosed that, he's a public figure, and he's a very important public figure now because he's become best buds in some kind of road bromance with the president-elect. And I'm starting to have a lot of disturbed insights about some of the things involved with DOGE, and also just information that you sent me about him himself. So should I start with DOGE and what my concerns are?
I think we should, because I don't think people have really thought that the concept is very seductive, right? Right. Scaling back government, especially if we see the Biden administration giving Ukraine another big Christmas gift, right? and making sure they're going to have a happy new year and giving Americans a slap in the face, a metaphorical lump of coal. But we have to be very careful, and we have to understand how this really works, right? How oversight works, because look, one problem we consistently had is the lack of oversight, even when there is supposed to be oversight. Then when you're talking to an entity like this, it really wouldn't necessarily have congressional oversight, sort of like this one entity that was aligned with Elizabeth Warren earlier on. The acronym
Wait,
leaves
you're
me at the
jumping
moment.
ahead of my knowledge. What happened with an entity aligned with Elizabeth
Back
Warren?
in, what was it, the CFP? It was a bureau related to credit loans, and it was what was it, the same day loan sort of issued using your and then other issues with credit, and the Republicans were very against it. And I remember talking a lot about it in 2017, 2018. They were very against it, and they were concerned that it lacked oversight because of the way it was set up, right? It wasn't really an agency per se in the same way that there's the other agencies within the bureaucracy. And you can see the pros and cons of that, right? Because our bureaucracy is so corrupt. But there was legitimate concerns about the lack of oversight. And I think that's where you're going to take us with your analysis of the mechanism and the structure of DOGE, right?
Yeah, totally. And isn't that interesting and useful that you found a parallel that threw up the exact same red flags that I'm seeing or observing the more I find out about DOGE. So let me just share that you remain our most censored commentator, because all the other platforms are streaming, including all of our X platforms except your X platform, Emerald, which is kind of I can't even annoy the powers that be as much as you do. You should take that as a real compliment.
I don't know why I'm considered the most annoying, because I see what a lot of other people say, and now what I say isn't so taboo. It might have been 4 years ago, but it's become pretty mainstream. So it's very interesting. I perhaps it's because we have conversations like these, Naomi.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. I just think it's so interesting that the guy we're about to criticize is keeping us up and open on 3 out of our 4 X channels except yours. But I'll just forge ahead because we can post this.
I'll retweet yours. So when you see me look at my phone, that's what I'm doing, y'all.
Thank you. So here's the thing about DOGE, all right? And again, when I looked into this, I was like, this is the most impressive psyop, essentially, of recent memory, because it was represented to us as this kind of superhero, superpower force of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and a few supporting cast of characters, maybe Rand Paul, right? But that these guys, young, hip, energetic, techie, would go with their flaming swords and slash the Department of, Education and cut government waste and close things down that were bloated. And everyone was cheering because it seemed like a really good idea to have people who seemed to be very MAGA or MAGA adjacent or MAGA aligned go in there with no corruption, no bloating, no affiliations, allegedly, just to make things better for the American people. Well, I know enough civics to have been nervous from the start, right? But I just hadn't taken time to look into DOGE. So I was thinking, well, Trump's a smart guy, and maybe he's figured out a format for this to work. But when I actually started clicking around, like, what is DOGE? And actually, I will confess, I got kind of alarmed by a parody account that said, we're gonna, defund universities that don't separate men's and women's lockers, which is kind of a good idea, right? But I know enough about Title IX to know that it has to go through many, many bureaucratic hoops in order to enforce that. So I didn't realize it was a parody account, but I did look into I'm just being honest. I did look into DOGE on non-parody accounts. And first thing I will tell you is it doesn't really have a website, right? And so I had to go to Wikipedia, which is doubtful anyway. And what is DOGE? So Doge is not a 501c3 and it's not a 501c4. I'll tell everyone why that matters in a minute. Of course, Emerald with her scary brain knows exactly why it matters. But the point is, it's not a company, it's not a private company, right, which has reporting requirements, tax requirements, certain guardrails. It's not a C3, meaning a nonprofit organization. And that format also has guardrails. You have to, for instance, turn in a 990, which is part of your tax return, that lets anyone see, it's public, what you're spending your money on and where your money comes from to some extent as a nonprofit. And Douglas Sear is saying Wikipedia is left-wing propaganda. I don't doubt it. My point in saying
it's probably aligned with the CIA. Let's be honest, Douglas.
Totally.
I've done my own experiments with Wikipedia. Go ahead.
Totally 1,000%. And we've had our own hellish experiences with Wikipedia to back that up. I'm just saying, like, these guys are tech bros or tech bro adjacent, and you can't find a Doge mission statement, description, website outside of these third-party summaries, right? Which is super dodgy. So it's not a C4. Now, what's a 501c4? It's an organization that allows people to support the issues of a candidate, but not directly to lobby. They can be more, now a C3 can't lobby at all, right? A C4 can't directly lobby, as I understand, but they could take out ads saying we hate the Department of Energy. Do you have a different view of that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I know I was looking down, but I was the entity I was talking about before was the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB.
Okay.
So I just wonder, is this something, have they proposed setting up DOGE under the executive branch, or, I mean, is that the proposal here? And then how would that work?
So let me get to that, because I have to get through a little bit of a thicket of nerdery before I get to that critical point. Point is, C4s have guardrails too. For instance, you can't merge governing with the activity of a C4. It's very important. So those have to be completely kept separate. So then, given that I've just shared with everyone how a C3 and a C4 works, how can DOGE do what it's supposed to do? And so it can't, is the answer, except as it is purely advisory. It can't slash anything. It has no executive power. It has no authoritative power. It has no government power. It's not a government entity. So even the name is kind of deceptive. Department of Government Efficiency. There is no such department. It's not a .gov. So the downside of that is, as much as you all may hate the government, there are some important accountability checks in our system, like FOIA. You can't FOIA DOGE because it's not part of the government, right? You can't, none of their internal communications are public, whereas you own every single email except those that are classified that our government agencies create. So to your point, Emerald, and sorry for that long and nerdy preamble, but it's important for people to understand what all the things DOGE is not. DOGE could theoretically exist in some executive capacity through an executive order, but even so, it can't exist. Like, I don't think the president has the power constitutionally to create anything except an advisory commission with an executive order, right? He can't, with an executive order, create, it has to be either in or outside the government, is my point. It can't be in a whole new space like Guantanamo, right? Which doesn't exist in the normal rule of law. So by that token, Congress would have to authorize it, as I understand, to have powers. Right. And then I'll stop my rant in just a minute, but why is this so concerning? Because the first thing that became a scandal for DOGE is self-dealing. DOGE, Elon Musk, we covered it in our last episode. Steve Bannon has been way out front with it. Elon Musk threw a tantrum about the H-1.5 immigration program, which allows tech companies to grossly underpay compared to American workers, foreign tech workers. So that hugely benefits Elon Musk's companies, right? And that was his first tantrum about DOGE, right? So that's called self-dealing. You can't do it if you're a C4. You can't do it if you're a C3. You can't do it if you're part of the government. I mean, Congress people get around it through sneaky ways, but it shouldn't surprise anyone that an entity that is not part of the government, not obligated to any disclosures, totally opaque, would have as its first desideratum self-dealing, something that one of the guys, as part of it, no board, right? No board process, bylaws. But one of the guys who's going to be doing it is like, hey, wait a minute, that cuts into my profits. I want to help myself and my business. So that's just my laying out of all the ways that a structure like DOGE can be completely corrupt. And I'll pause there to let you react.
I agree with you. Like I said, I really, and to your point, to have a real independent agency, it would seem to require congressional authorization, which you could do. They could, like Democrats do, tie it into some kind of legislation, right? Piece of legislation, establish it officially and constitutionally, and then keep it going, which is what happened with the CFPB. It was actually part of the Dodd-Frank Act, right?
No,
you'll remember
what
that.
Act? Say that again.
The Dodd-Frank, which was
Dodd-Frank. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you identify that for people who don't know what that is?
Yeah, it was a piece of legislation that was, again, I haven't talked about this in a long time, but it was passed in 2010. This, of course, was after the major recession that hit the Obama administration and the housing crisis, all that. They passed the Dodd-Frank. There had been a lot of back and forth on that, but it established the CFPB. It had language in there that allowed for this independent agency, even though it didn't really have congressional oversight per se, from how I understand it. So they could write legislation. The concern is too, let's say that even Elon and Vivek were, just being gracious, were on the up and up, and they didn't look at their own bottom line, and they really did want to just get rid of government waste. The problem is now you establish it, and then it's according to how it goes forward. It can be a very, sometimes good intentions don't last when it comes to government, right? There's a lot of entities and agencies and legislation that was begun under good intentions, but only to be corrupted later. So I am wary. I'm always, I guess I'm wary of everything, but I'd like to know more about how it's actually going to be set up and the kind of oversight that it will have. Because look, this is what Congress is supposed to be doing, but they absolutely refuse to do.
Right.
Donald Trump could absolutely use the pulley pit and his power that he has. I mean, look, he is the most popular Republican president, perhaps, of all time, as far as the kind of support he has. He could absolutely use his popularity to make members of Congress cut government spending, cut programs, because that is the power of the purse that was given to Congress. And it said, and I'm sorry, I am going to go on a bit of a tirade.
Oh,
he backed Speaker Mike Johnson once again.
What is that? What is that?
Ukraine spending. I just have no words for it. And look, it's obvious to me, and I'll just say it. I said it on X. Probably another reason why I'm shadow banned so heavily is that it's pretty clear now that Speaker Johnson is compromised. He doesn't have to go this far. If he's just cowardly, he doesn't have to go as far as he has with giving the Biden administration and Democrats all the gifts that they wanted. It's absolutely egregious. And I don't know who, at the end of the day, it was Donald Trump's decision to support him. He didn't have to. I guess there is a question as to who would take his place in the speakership. There's always a name thrown around, Jim Jordan. There were some people floating the name behind the scenes to see what kind of congressional support he would have this time around. In the past, he's not wanted to do it. But even he's a good talker.
Right.
He's in congressional hearings, but I hear from whistleblowers, he just doesn't really do the things that he could do with the power he has on his committee. So, maybe there's just nobody better, but I just don't think he should have endorsed Mike Johnson.
Wow.
For this congressional spending issue alone and rolling back on big government.
Right. Well, you're saying something very profound that I really want people to hear, which is everything DOGE is supposed to do is actually what our elected tripartite government is supposed to do. For instance, someone said, give it a fucking rest. Jordan, sorry for my language, is the handle here. The power that they would wield is detailing where all of our money goes. This enrages the people, and we pressure our representatives to make cuts. Senator Joni Ernst was the first to take heat over Hegseth. So theoretically, that's the power that they would wield, though again, as of now, DOGE has zero power that isn't making suggestions to the president, which, by the way, is something that any think tank can do. Like, you can send the president a suggestion, right? So DOGE has right now no executive power, no budget power, no authority at all beyond making suggestions. However, we already have an agency that's supposed to say where all our money goes, and that's the Office of Management and Budget, right? OMB. However, I will just stress, a group of private individuals does not have the power to figure out where all our money goes unless they're given authorities to investigate that they don't currently have. In other words, you have to be part of the government to look under the hood for things that are not already public. Emerald, what's your view of that?
Yeah, it just when you brought up OMB, that will be headed again by Russ Vought, who was the director in the first Trump term during a certain amount of the time. It'll be interesting. I haven't talked to him, but I would love to hear his take on how this DOGE will work with his office, because there will have to be a relationship there.
Right.
And he could provide probably some clarification on this. They will be really good people to reach out. The Center for Renewing America, which is his think tank.
Now, it would be a good idea, theoretically, to have, an office in the government tasked with explaining to people in very clear language where the money goes and what it's being spent on, because those documents can be horrible thickets of opacity to even understand. But theoretically, this already happens. Like, our money flow is already public, right? So I guess what I want to say, two more things, and then I promise I'll stop. The Elon Musk DOGE discourse seems sometimes incredibly clueless about how the United States government works. And I'll just note, he's not an American citizen, to my knowledge, or maybe he has dual citizenship. But sometimes I feel like he never took civics in high school or read a civics book, because, for instance, he says things like, oh, well, DOGE is going to make sure that you can see the bills, 7 days before they're due to be voted on. Well, maybe that
would be good.
That would be good. But can I just say something? As someone who runs a company devoted to bringing government data sets to the American people, and that's Daily Clout, BillCam, which any of you can go look at right now, it's dailyclout.com/BillCam, has that. In other words, it's already the law that you need to submit a bill in its draft form, and then it's in its updated form in real time the minute it's sponsored.
But they waived that with these, they suspend that with these massive spending bills. And I think that's probably the ones of most concern.
I mean, maybe they did, but I guess what I'm trying to say is a sophisticated, knowledgeable person about the very process of legislation, including allocating money, which is what DOGE is supposed to be, slashing and burning and making more efficient, should know that the law already compels everyone at state and federal levels who is sponsoring a bill to have it entered, and there's an office devoted to this, into a database that's publicly accessible. Now, maybe they were making changes, right, until the last minute. Maybe people are bored or ill-informed in Congress and don't know that they can access that bill on BillCam or govtrack.us or congress.gov. But they can. And the other thing that really annoyed me is someone said, I think it was Elon Musk, let's get AI to read these 600-page bills. Amy Kelly, my COO, had the idea of getting our developer to apply AI in spring of this year to all the bills. And now there's already AI on the bills on our platform. So it's not a hard thing to do. And it already exists, and a non-AI version already exists for every congressman, every senator. So that just seemed like a giant place of ignorance that he really should know about.
So let me ask you then,
law, he should do that.
Does these like massive, CRs that we just talked about and the omnibus bills that we go through, every year, every few months, do those go on your platform as well? And how fast do they? Because I mean, when I'm talking to members of Congress, this is changing in real time, and they are inserting poison pills up to the last minute.
So that is something, if that's happening, that is really illegal, because every change in a draft is supposed to be updated in the government database. And the government database is an official data set that flows to all kinds of third parties, again, including government ones like congress.gov and state level databases, and they should be updated in real time. So if they're deliberately not obeying the law, then what should happen is they should be forced to obey the law, but reinventing something that we already have, which we're ahead of every other Western country that I've looked at in terms of transparency of the actual legislative process. It gets updated in a live digital database. We already have that, Elon, and so if people are illegally marking up documents without submitting them in real time to be updated, that's a violation of laws that already protect the people's right to see exactly what's happening with their legislation.
Yeah, they definitely come down to the last minute, and we're still looking at afterwards at what finally made it in the final draft.
Well, that's totally illegal. You are not supposed to be able to pass a bill that hasn't been officially entered in its final form into the government database. So they're breaking the law. So that's the Justice Department that should be going after whoever's breaking the law. So that's number one. Now, there are two things I also want to say, and then I promise I'll stop, but this is so dear to my heart. Why is it dear to my heart? Because people, read your history. Every tyrant, every coup, every tyranny, comes dressed up in, this will make your life easier, or this will, streamline. The Enabling Acts, the Nazi, legislation that gave all power to the Nazi Party, even though it had been a fragile representative republic, that the predicate of the Enabling Acts was, legislation is clunky and messy and government is messy, we need to streamline it, right? Every tyrant says, I'll make the trains run on time. I'll fix what's wrong. Your lives will become more efficient. So what I really want to tell you all is, you guys didn't like Soros and other independent rich people, oligarchs, getting into the middle of our judges, and you didn't like Zuckerberg and
prosecutors
in our computers. So why do you think it's going to be different with another oligarch having the power to intervene in our really very beautifully set up system that isn't working only because we're not forcing it to work? We're not holding people accountable to make it work. Last thing, I promise I'll stop. At the beginning of the lockdowns, Emerald, and no, I really do promise. I'm just such a nerd.
I don't mind.
Okay, thank you. I'll give you yours in a minute. At the beginning of the lockdowns, it was COVID, right? It was an emergency. Two entities, a whole country, the country of Australia, and a whole city, the great city of New York, tried this same thing. And this is what they did. They put together a COVID commission, right? And who was on the COVID commission? In New York, then Governor Cuomo tried to assemble these same suspects, Bloomberg, but also Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, a handful of other tech oligarchs. To do what? To give their advice. But actually, Government had shut down, so they were replacing it with these unelected oligarchs on the COVID commission. People resisted and reacted, and that's why it didn't get pushed through in New York City. Where did it get pushed through? In Australia, and they haven't recovered. At the very beginning of the lockdowns, I watched this in real time in April, I believe, of 2020. Parliament was sent home. And I'm like, no, never send Parliament home, right? And this happened in Western democracies, Britain, everyone was sent home, okay? And who got brought in? A COVID commission. And I literally remember saying, and it was oligarchs, right? Unaccountable, unelected, but it was an emergency. I remember saying, who's running the nation of Australia right now? And it was a very viral post, and no one could answer it. And some of the most senior kind of scholars of the legal process in Australia were like poo-pooing me, but they couldn't answer it. Well, Australia never got their democracy back, right? Mm-hmm. They never got their democracy back. And the whole habit of democratic accountability got lost in that COVID commission. So here we are, folks. It's the same thing, an unelected group of rich people, even if they weren't rich people, any unelected group, you think they'll be free of being lobbied by, people you will never know for outcomes you can never see. Why? Because they're not part of the government, and they're not a nonprofit, and they're not a C4. So there's no mechanism by which you can see where's their money coming from, who's influencing them, what's the conflicts of interest. You will not know, and that is a tyrant's dream. There, I've said it.
Well, fortunately, it seems like Elon Musk is telling us what he wants up front. I assume he will become very hip to what he's doing and a little bit savvier in the near future after this H-1B debacle. But for now, I think he would tell us who's lobbying him, because he's pretty upfront about what he wants to see, which is surprising because they usually do just do it behind the scenes while pretending to pay lip service. Right, to what the Americans want. Like, oh no, yeah, we're gonna totally reform H-1B, while behind the scenes pushing to keep it going in a way that is beneficial to his companies. But I do suspect that it will change.
Emerald, I'm really surprised that you're giving him that benefit of the doubt, even as he's shadow banning you as we speak. And
no, I'm just saying I'm shocked. I'm shocked that he came out so strongly for the H-1B when it's obviously, anti the America First platform.
Oh, I get it. You're being funny. You're like, of course, because he's not smart enough to not tell us.
I don't think he's savvy enough yet, but I fear he will get savvy very quickly once he does land in DC and DOGE is a real thing, right?
Right.
For now, I think he would probably not be it's been very interesting to watch him battle with people online, and then you learn a little bit more. And then they put out the information about how it does benefit Tesla, and he's like, oh, but H-1B, and he just hasn't been very savvy with protecting his personal interests. Because look, this is what all those people do when they go to DC, and that's why it's so hard to get anything done. I mean, I saw it in the first Trump administration. There were obviously people in there that were advocating for their own personal interests, their own corporate interests. And they did it much more behind the scenes while pretending to be in line with MAGA. So in a way, I like that he's just being honest about the way he feels for now, though I totally disagree with him on it. And we talked about in the last episode why we both feel that there needs to be some serious immigration reform across the board, and you have to stop the bleeding everywhere.
Exactly.
I just had a leak in my house, right? Again, for like the fourth time this year. I've been I don't know what has been with the water issue. It's like, I swear I would think if I was, really conspiratorial, I'd be like, somehow, it's not just shadow banning. They figured out the way to make my house flood. But you have to turn off all the water, right? You have to turn it all off everywhere to figure out where the leak is and stop the water.
Right. So this is a metaphor.
It's a metaphor, yes.
Gotcha. I hear what you're saying. So someone pointed out, Cynthia DeMoss pointed out, can we go into a months-long fight right at the beginning of Trump's administration? And there's that too, right? I mean, Steve Bannon came out swinging against Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and the H-1B immigration, in his words, scam. And we don't really know where Trump lands on this issue. I don't know if there's been an update since we last spoke. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure the left is loving it. A giant split, not even between MAGA and Maha, which I would have expected, but MAGA and tech bros, right? Even
we did not see that one coming.
You did not. No,
not this fast. Not like this fast. I knew later down the road, if there wasn't a fix to the censorship issue, right, that we've been talking a lot about, that we're still experiencing, then I figured it would come to a head, right? And that would take about a year because people would wait and say, oh, they're going to do something. It just, it was so entrenched in the censorship industrial complex. They're working on it. They're working on, how many years have they been, clearing out the deep state? But then I figured eventually people will be like, see that nothing was changing and that enough of those people like Zuckerberg were still having dinner with Trump in the White House and Bill Gates visiting the White House, that they would then have a fallout with the tech bros. But this is much earlier than I expected. I did see probably Maha and MAGA butting heads a little bit earlier, perhaps over certain, I would say, social policy issues, what I mean? But no. This was not on my 2024 bingo card, I guess.
Exactly. Well,
not my 2025 though.
Well, the world is full of surprises. So I think this has been so fascinating. We've almost run out of time,
I guess
but we've got sort of 20 more minutes. So do you want us to talk a little bit about the very shocking link you sent me about possible bizarre, supernatural, spiritualist, transhumanist things, or go right into our big picture journeys that we wanted to share?
I guess we could start there and then segue into our journeys, because one thing I have learned through covering politics is that I realized how spiritual it all was.
What do you mean by that?
That it is really sort of a battle between good and evil.
Interesting.
And that grew my faith. But, in that's why I'm very sensitive to certain ideas that people might have supported in the past or currently support. We don't know. Elon Musk has been rather pro-transhumanist in the past. You got to remember, he has his Neuralink chip.
Right.
And he believes that there should be some kind of integration of humanity with machine, and that is the way of the future. And as a Christian, I find that absolutely terrifying that someone is given that much power that might feel that way.
Right.
So that's the concern for me on that. And maybe we should go into that more in another episode. And we can bring up the links, because it is very detailed research by a friend of mine, Clay Clark. And he really goes out and digs up the open source information. There's a lot of open source information. And then of late, it's also very concerning that OpenAI got an influx of capital from BlackRock. I mean, on our side.
And Bill Gates, may I note, and Bill Gates.
Yeah, BlackRock, Bill Gates is akin to Soros.
Right.
For us. So there's a lot of concerning relationships in past statements that we cannot forget about. And I think we've lost Naomi for a moment. But yeah, what Naomi and I didn't mean to segue into here is the good versus evil, and our kind of spiritual awakening, I guess you could say, through our coverage of politics, our analysis of politics. And for me, I'm a lot of you probably know, I'm actually a pastor's daughter. Grew up the holler, grew up beside my one-room church where I went to church with people who were mostly family. I grew up Pentecostal. And I have always been a believer, maybe not practice as strongly as I did once I got older. But when I started covering politics and covering Congress particularly, got embedded in the White House press pool, hopefully Naomi can join us back. I'll keep talking until I find out what's going on with her. It really grew my faith. I became much stronger in my faith and my walk with God, my walk as a Christian, because I saw that true evil exists. And also I knew that I shouldn't necessarily be where I was. I didn't have any special any special qualifications or particularly even education. I mean, I went to journalism school, but there were people who went to much more prestigious places than me to be put in the White House press pool, though I've learned, and I've shared this often with you all, they are not a very they weren't a very impressive group of people once you really got to talking to them. But I realized that God put me there for a reason, because there was no way I should have been in that position. I elevated very quickly. I think some of you might have followed the journey with me. It is kind of surreal at how fast my journalism grew and my reach grew. I really couldn't even explain myself. So I knew it had to be God, and that really grew my faith. And I think that says, as we head into 2025, I'm very thankful for the way things have turned out this year. There's a lot to be concerned about and continue to be prayerful about. I really wish we had Naomi with us, because she and I do talk about this offline a lot. And I realize we haven't really shared it much with our viewers, and we're going to try to do that more in the new year. That's a goal for us in 2025. Now that we feel like we can breathe a little bit, right? We're talking about all these concerns we have, but we do have a moment now, I think, to focus on some of the good things as well. So we're going to share a little more about who we are in our personal lives through 2025. We want to, have more conversation with you all. And I love this, that we have started this in 2024 and that you all are taking the journey with us. Hopefully we can grow this in 2025. My shadow banning has been a bit of an issue, in all honesty, because it cuts back our reach. We'll be putting it on Substack in the future, so that's a great place to see it as well. But clearly, God has put both Naomi and I here and put us together. I hate that she's not with us. Let me see if I can check in on her. But if any of you have some questions, oh, there she is. I was just telling them about my faith journey a little bit. And I also mentioned that in 2025, now that we have a little bit of breathing room, we're going to have more conversations like that, right?
Yes.
More personal conversations about who we are, just some different aspects of life than just politics, which I think will be enjoyable for all of us. I don't know about y'all, but I needed a break.
Yeah. You all can see me and hear me, right?
Yeah.
I apologize. You've been having weird problems with your water. I've been having weird problems with my tech, and literally they ramp up whenever I'm talking to you. But that said, I heard everything you said. So I thoroughly, agree. And I also want to second that Emerald and I really want to, go beyond the talking heads and be a little bit more personal and share a little bit more, and ask you to share a little bit more about your journeys, because for sure, Emerald, I feel like we're in such a weird time in history, unlike any time in my lifetime, where everything's changing all the time. It's not like literally the world that we went to sleep in 2020 is not the world we're inhabiting at the end of 2024. And heaven knows, what dimension we're going to be in 2025. Like, it's almost like the veils are thinning, and this is what astrologers say. I mean, I know that you're a Christian, and a lot of my Christian viewers don't like my talking about astrology, and I kind of don't blame you. So I'm just positioning this a little better. But I can't help being intrigued by astrology, and a lot of astrologers do say that the human race and Earth is in a kind of speeding up process, a kind of evolutionary process, an ascension process that involves, separating from clearer separations between those things that are not ascending and those things that are. Let me switch that to Judeo-Christian language so that I don't make you nervous. I can tell from your expression. I don't blame you. A lot of our viewers share these concerns. Jesus talked about the kingdom of heaven being, it's so interesting in Hebrew, because I'm reading the Hebrew Matthew, like a version of Matthew in Hebrew, which could theoretically go back to the 1st century, though there's debate about that. And in Hebrew, it's the kingdom of the sky isn't is nearing, but it's near. It's like physically close. So in Hebrew, you have this sense of like the interpenetration of the kingdom of heaven and earth, depending on our moral choices. Anyway, that's why I think it's good for us to share what we're really seeing and feeling on an intimate level, because our world is changing so fast, and morality seems to be the kind of the essence of the change.
And it's interesting to say, I found as I continued every year that I cover politics, it's harder to separate, what is happening politically from the spiritual. They now seem more intertwined.
Interesting.
By the day.
Can you say more about that?
Well, like I said, every year it just seemed like the attempt to oppress people, to deceive them. I saw someone mention Dr. Fauci as their priest. I agree with that to a certain faction of people who lack, faith and belief in God. That became their God, and there was such deception. And it was being perpetrated by our federal government. Right. And this wasn't just our government, as you noted. It was a global effort that really took hold in Australia. And, you originally in your reporting, and you're journalists, you kind of keep those things separate. You say what you see, but it became evident to me that it was harder sometimes to describe things without getting a little bit spiritual. Especially when you were getting into analysis and commentary, maybe not so much in my, basic reporting and from the White House, but I will tell you, I was always cognizant of it, whether I was just standing there on the White House North Lawn and saying, this is what's happening, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. It probably still bled into my reporting because it was just, with so much of my awareness, and it was coming so much more of, you had to keep it in that context because it became so evident. There was such a spiritual aspect to it. And I think that continues. I think more people are aware of it too. So they're more open to, talking about it in this way, because I can't tell you how many friends that I knew from, say, college, who were completely atheists, had no what they considered a spiritual life whatsoever. 2020 was a real turning point for them. And it wasn't that somebody reached out to them. It was based on their own experience and what they could see and perceive in the world. And they realized, wait, there's more to this than I thought before. Right.
Yeah, well, I've said this many times before, but, to me, it was a negative proof. And I think to a lot of more secular people, it was a negative proof that you see so much evil that you can't explain, and it's directed at God and the divine. And if that exists, then God must exist, right? And by the same token, like, I know we're not getting into the Clay Clark essay yet. We're going to save it for our next conversation, which I hope everyone will join us for. But there is more, and we've talked about this a little, more and more evidence that a lot of very influential, powerful people are like literally worshiping, Baphomet or Saturn or dark forces. There's a real CERN portal in Switzerland, and there was a real kind of satanic opening ritual for some of those facilities. What was like? I don't want to get all like. I don't want to ever stray from the facts, but why did the Pope open 5 portals? Why was he accompanied by children? Why does this happen every 25 years? Do you know, or are you just not?
I don't know, because I'm actually not Catholic, though. I have so many Catholic people around me. I guess you would say I'm Catholic adjacent, but I'm still a Protestant.
Right.
I actually don't know that. And it's interesting. I saw some chatter amongst some of my Catholic intellectual friends on social media, and even they disagreed about what that really was. But that, we could bring one of them on and have a conversation about that, or a couple of them, but I'm not real well versed in that.
Well, let me go back to my knowledge base and say one thing I'm seeing everywhere, Emerald, is a kind of inversion or distortion of the symbols and rituals of the Judeo-Christian tradition in a way that isn't random. And I think AI really must have a role in that, because the logic that is distorting or changing our symbols and our rituals isn't human logic. It's really machine logic. But let me just give you one example. There was a Wall Street Journal editorial, or maybe it was the New York Times, saying there really should be 9 nights to Hanukkah. And, you know, it is a sacred story. It is 8 nights. There were 8 nights that the oil in the desecrated temple in Jerusalem during a revolt of the Maccabees against the Seleucid Empire. There was no oil. There was enough for 1 night, but God created a miracle of abundance for 8 nights. It wasn't 9 nights. There isn't some woke reason to add the 9th night. It's just to break that chain of tradition that has held for, 2,200 centuries. And I see this everywhere. Like, for another example, I'm a supporter of LGBTQ rights. I am. We can have a debate about what that means in another episode. But something I'm really noticing is every church, every denomination, except like fundamentalist ones, but even Catholic churches, everywhere around me in urban areas at least, has a rainbow flag. And that is like becoming the brand of Christianity, is the rainbow flag. And it's
we can definitely have a conversation about that in another episode.
Right. Well, but I guess where I'm going is, much as I appreciate and support LGBTQ rights, that's not the message of Christianity. I mean, it's I'm not saying it shouldn't be inclusive of gay and lesbian people, of course, but in my view, but I'm saying it is a rebranding, right? So that little kids growing up are going to register that every church they go to has a rainbow flag, and that this is the true message of the church, if they don't know any better, the central message. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, okay, here's another one. This may seem trivial. I don't think it's trivial. All my childhood and all the way back to the 19th century, families that were Christian at Christmas, this came out of Germany, had a Christmas tree, and the whole family would gather around the Christmas tree. And that was like the symbol, like Dickens, right? The symbol of family togetherness at Christmas. They're around the Christmas tree, opening their presents, etc. And you guys are celebrating something really beautiful and important, the birth of baby Jesus. And there used to be, in my memory, stars. Why? Because a star led the wise men to Bethlehem, or to the manger. And there would be angels. Why? Because angels were heard on high. Like, these things go back for centuries, if not all the way to the gospel. Well, now I've been noticing in decorating magazines, don't laugh at me, Emerald, there's a Christmas tree in every room, including in the kids' rooms. So everyone has their own Christmas tree. And so the family isn't together. They aren't thinking about the birth of baby Jesus. And there's random stuff being put on the pinnacle of the Christmas tree that is not Christian at all, like random, vintage artifacts. And then things that are deeply Christian, like in the most recent edition of Country Living, or one of those titles, they took nativity scenes and they just put them on the sideboard, the draining board of the sink, right in the kitchen. And it's just, no, but seriously, it's such a constant, Christmas markets. In Europe too, they used to be called Christmas markets till 2020. And hooray, like, I'm Jewish, I don't care, Christmas markets, awesome. It doesn't offend me. But now they're then they were holiday markets, now they're winter markets. And even Christmas, you can't even say it. I was on Amtrak, and Amtrak said, oh, well, there's a lot of traffic because of the solstice.
Wait, they literally said that?
What?
They went full pagan.
They went full pagan.
I did not know that. You didn't tell me that. That's crazy.
The solstice. So that's what I'm seeing, like this erasure of Judeo-Christian, but really Western religious images and religious traditions, and religion itself, right, being targeted.
Well, yeah, but I do feel like there was a little bit of a clawing back of that this year, because while all of that has been true for the last several years, and I've always spoken out about it and been very concerned, I do feel like everywhere I went, we talked about it a little bit in the last episode, there was more Merry Christmas. People felt more comfortable saying that again this year. I felt like there was more, there were more Christmas trees places, you know, where you go, celebration of even the nativity. I saw more nativity scenes than I've seen in a long time, but I'm in a blue area. Who celebrates all this, and the churches in the downtown churches where I live, they all have the rainbow flag and the BLM sign.
Oh, really?
Just to make sure you know where they stand. And yeah, it's different denominations. Actually, the one Catholic church does not, which is interesting. That is downtown. But you have to also look, and when we're talking about Europe, they've had such an influx of Islam. Mm-hmm. Right, and they always seem scared by the number, and they have counted numbers. Oh, and you're back on the other one.
Oh my God, this is so weird.
Shut up. Okay. They're really messing with Naomi today, it seems. We can hear you, but we can't see you. I think we're getting close to. Hopefully, we get Naomi back so we can thank our sponsors. We're getting close to the time. For this episode. Thanks for all of you all who did join in with us on the last day of 2024. That makes us feel very special that you had spent your last day of the year with us. And like we said, we have lots of exciting plans for 2025. I hope that whatever you're doing tonight, you stay safe. You're very thankful and grateful and blessed to be around wonderful friends and family. I will be here. I'm about to get off here and start getting ready. And we look forward to the new year with you all. We're very thankful for that. I'm going to see what's up with Naomi, because she is the one who thanks our sponsors. So I don't want to go by without doing that. Even if she can pop in for a few minutes. I don't really have the information. So if anyone wants to put in, while we're waiting for Naomi, their plans for the new year, anything that you're looking out for, that you're keeping your eye on, love to hear from you all as well on that. And it looks like it's just going to be me for right now. No vaccines, please. Yeah, that's all I want for 2025 is no jabs, right? I would love to see the jabs pulled off the market.
Can you
Why
hear
do I
us
get shadow banned? Yeah, that's a great question.
Can you hear us again?
Yeah, we can see you again. And
unbelievable.
We can go more into that in the future episodes, Roscoe. I have my theories, and I'm doing my own test to try different things out to see what exactly it's about. I've tried to reach out to people at X to no avail, but we can get into that in the future. Naomi, I think we are drawing on time, and before we lose you again, I think we should thank our sponsors.
Absolutely. Well, Emerald, I am on my phone, so can you look at your phone? And I texted you the live reads to thank our wonderful sponsors. And so while Emerald calls that up, I just want to really thank Native Path Hydrate. Wow, Roscoe said I got off X. I felt a really spooky presence there. That is really interesting. That's interesting. Sometimes I do feel like AI is just seeding disturbing images or images that make you despair. And I do feel that sometimes on X, but other platforms as well. I mean, my gosh, TikTok, you could kill yourself after 2 minutes on TikTok. Do you have the messages from our sponsors?
I do. So awesome. I'll be the one to share those today. We're starting today with the Wellness Company, a company that I have long been supportive of. I really love what they do over there. Now, I've been involved with them for a couple of years. Natural disasters are the new reality from the Maui fires, which you and I have talked about a lot on this show, Naomi, to Hurricane Helene, which affected people that I love and hold dear. We're seeing catastrophic disasters take out entire towns in 24 hours with no warning, resulting in a lack of basic resources. And if you're keeping your eye on Western North Carolina, it still looks absolutely devastated. They still are lacking those resources. And, we're wired to think it won't happen here, right? Nobody thought that would happen in Appalachia. And then in the blink, you're in survival mode. So you can be prepared in advance. That's the best defense you can have against the unexpected, is looking ahead and kind of expecting it, even though you shouldn't be. And clearly, as we saw in North Carolina, you can't rely on the government. But the wellness company's emergency kit completely remove the gatekeeper and subside panic by providing you with a personalized mini pharmacy in the convenience of your own home. And a lot of people, when you're thinking preparedness, you might not be thinking that. You're thinking, food that will sustain you. You're thinking water, but you'll also need antibiotics. You're going to need ways to treat infections. And they do that from bacterial infections, staph, bite wounds, UTIs, strep throat, respiratory illness. You no longer have to be at the mercy of someone else to help you. You keep a fire extinguisher handy in case of a fire, right? Right. It's probably a good idea to have some basic medicines in safe place. I do. You should see. I do kind of look like a pharmacy. I started doing this a couple of years ago, probably more like 3 years ago after the COVID pandemic. So it's a good idea for you and our audience to have some basic medicines in a safe place in the event that you need them, right? And at some point you're going to need this and you have it on hand. It's the same mindset, just a different product from the fire extinguisher or sustainable food. So getting an emergency kit is fully digital, all from the convenience of your couch. You can fill out an intake form. A pharmacist reviews it. They approve it. Then you'll receive the kit in about 2 weeks. The medical board approved guidebook crafted by our friend, Dr. Peter McCullough, tells you exactly what you need to do. This is preparedness simplified, folks. You invest in your family's self-managed insurance plan. You absolutely, this is one of the things I always tell my friends and family, and when they ask what they need to do to prepare for an emergency, and that is stock up on antibiotics and steroids and things that the wellness company can provide you. And you can get that by visiting dailyclouthealth.com, dailyclouthealth.com. And do you know the code for this one?
Yes, I do. It's Daily Clout. That got cut off a little. Daily Clout is the code. Yep.
Okay, Daily Clout, and you can save 10% and get free shipping. That's a really great deal. 10% save and get free shipping. That, of course, is for U.S. residents only. I know we do have some of you across the globe out there with us, but it is for U.S. residents only on the free shipping.
Thank you so much. That was so beautifully done, Emerald. Would you kindly tell us about Birch Gold and Native Hydrate?
Sure, I can do that. Well, we're looking a little bit better for the economy, but you'll have to remember that under Trump, gold did actually surge. So it's still a good idea to look at gold. Increased tariffs on our trade partners, tax cuts, and regulation changes. It's now why you should learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic more than ever. Birch Gold, the only gold company that Naomi, Daily Clout Trust is releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. I am looking into Birch Gold myself with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. So great endorsement there. To get your free copy along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold, you can text your name, text Daily Clout.
It's Daily Clout to 9898. Yep.
And the fact is, the national debt continues to increase thanks to, in part, to Speaker Mike Johnson, right, which we discussed a little earlier. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar, and Birch Gold is still the company trusted by the Daily Clout to help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Again, you can text Daily Clout to 989898 to get your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. And there's no obligation. It's only information, so you really can't lose by doing so. And with an A+ better business rating, countless 5-star reviews. I have many more of my friends talking about Birch Gold.
Right.
Thousands of happy customers. Obviously, you can trust Birch Gold. So again, text Daily Clout to 989898. And finally, Native Path. And tomorrow's the day we start our Native Path Challenge.
That's right, the Collagen Challenge. I'm going to party really hard tonight so that I can really see a difference starting.
And take your before picture.
I know, exactly.
We're totally dehydrated. You wake up in the morning, you have like dark circles. There you go. That's going to be a really good advertisement.
I have no ego. I'm just going to like document the shadows and the haggardness and then go on to the sunlit uplands of the Native Path Collagen. But tell me about Native Hydrate.
So when you're really dehydrated tomorrow morning, you'll definitely want to get out your Native Path Hydrate. Most people know that staying hydrated is essential to nearly every bodily function, but 75% of Americans still don't consume enough fluid daily. I'm guilty of that. I'll be honest.
too.
So this is going to be a big deal for me. And of course, as we age, natural body changes make staying hydrated much, much harder. I can tell a huge difference now that I've entered my 40s, especially with all the terrible stuff that's in our food, the excessive sugars. That's where you can get Native Path to come in with a little extra help. Native Path's Hydrate is not just another drink mix. It's thoughtfully designed. It's a formula packed with BCAAs and 9 essential amino acids to help with muscle recovery and overall vitality. So it's more than just looking like you're hydrated. Plus, it's completely sugar-free. It's 100% natural. My husband has given it a 2 thumbs up on taste.
So good.
I will find out tomorrow. I really did want to start day 1, January 1st for the 30-day challenge. With your Native Hydrate product, you can fuel your body with essential electrolytes at the cellular level for overall vitality. Unlike other hydration drink mixes that are designed for marathon runners that contain lots, like upwards of 1,000 milligrams of sodium. And I could tell that because I immediately start, getting puffy. Native Path Hydrate contains just 230 as compared to 1,000 milligrams of sodium for optimal daily hydration. It's free of artificial flavors. It's free of sugars. It's free of dyes. It's only 5 calories per serving for those of you calorie counting. Right now, you can get up to 44% off. That's a huge savings for just being a listener of our show, Emerald and Naomi. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You get 2 free gifts, not 1, but 2, plus free shipping. And all you have to do is visit nativehydrate.com/dailyclout. That's nativehydrate.com/dailyclout. And to see what Native Hydrate can do for you. And of course, you can join us in your 30-day challenge and share your pictures with us. I love doing that with people. And it keeps us accountable too, right? It makes it more fun for all of us.
Exactly. It's going to keep me from turning into an absolute couch potato in the new year. And also, I just want to say, I interviewed Chad Walding, who is the CEO of Native Path. And it turns out these hydration drinks, this product, I didn't think hydration was that important, but he pointed out that the brain is made largely of water, and that when you're dehydrated or when your cells aren't absorbing water well, it creates brain fog. And I know, Emerald, that I've had mornings where I just woke up cranky and irritable and just not thinking, as clearly as I wanted to or needed to. And I would have a glass of Native Hydrate. My favorite is the berry flavor. I really like tangerine as well. And just literally the minute you drink it, you start to feel your mood lift and also just sharper. It's quite amazing. So I can't wait to do the challenge with you and all of you. It's going to be so much fun. Emerald, this is so fun. We have to say goodbye to each other and our friends.
I know.
We have to say goodbye to 2024. But hopefully 2025 will be so much better. Thank you for everything you did in 2024 to be an absolute pain in the behind to the powers that be. The most censored woman on the internet, a fearless, intrepid reporter. I admire you so much, and I'm so honored to co-host with you. And everyone, thank you for joining us. Over 4,500 live listeners in spite of your shadow banning. Anything you want to say before we say goodbye, Emerald?
Yeah, I want to say that 2024, one of the highlights of the year has been connecting with you on a greater level, Naomi, and becoming even better friends with you and your wonderful husband, Brian. It's been such a great addition to our friend circle. And also with the opportunity to talk to more of you that I might not have been able or have been connected with before. So I'm very excited about 2025. Prayers that we have a blessed year for everyone.
Absolutely.
Happy New Year, y'all.
Happy New Year to you and to you all. Take care, everyone. See you